Starting with number 5, we have Behemoth. No, not the ride at Canada's Wonderland. I'm talking about the mythological beast that dates back to the beginning of mankind, and whose name is now an adjective for any large or powerful being. The name Behemoth originated historically from the archaic Jewish name for hippopotamus, and is described as a beast from the biblical book of Job. He is a form of the primeval chaos monster created by God at the beginning of creation, being paired up with the other chaos monster Leviathan, and according to later Jewish tradition, both would become food for the righteous at the end time. Hey, if I wind up qualifying as righteous, can I have a funnel cake instead? Once again, not any kind of reference to the theme park. These beings came first, but now I'm kinda in the mood to tackle a roller coaster. While I've established that Behemoth was a brutish beast known for incredible strength, legend says he was originally created to help stabilize the world, and is known to create chaos in humans' lives, just like my roommate. He is said to take the form of a colossally large elephant with pitch black eyes covered in white scales that appear to be falling off, and has teeth the size of Mount Everest. Yeah, that's a little too big for my liking. The direct quote from the book of Job that I mentioned earlier is as follows. 15 Behold Behemoth, which I made as I made you, he eats grass like an ox. 16 Behold, his strength in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. 17 He makes his tail stiff like a cedar, the sinews of his thighs are knit together. 18 His bones are tubes of bronze, his limbs like bars of iron. 19 He is the first of the works of God, let him who made him bring near his sword. 20 For the mountains yield food for him where all the wild beasts play. 21 Under the lotus plants he lies, in the shelter of the reeds and in the marsh. 22 For his shade, the lotus trees cover him, the willows of the brook surround him. 23 Behold, if the river is turbulent, he is not frightened. He is confident through Jordan rushes against his mouth. 24 Can one take him by his eyes, or pierce his nose with a snare? Behemoth and Leviathan make an appearance in Revelation 13, as they try to fight against God and can be only slain by God. Thessalonians 2:8, Revelation 19:20. Both these beasts are extremely strong, unruly, and untamable in nature. In Revelation 13:11-12, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns, like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. 12 He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. And that's enough Bible babble for right now. In 4th place, we have Vine, an Earl and King of Hell. This Earl commands a simple 36 legions of demons. Because I know y'all are gonna make me do the math for this one, a legion is anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 demons. So roughly between 108 to 216,000 demons. Where's my gold star for calculating that? And how are there so many demons? The significance of his name seems to be from the Latin word vinea, vine, which is also the name given to an ancient war machine made of wood and covered with leather and branches, used to overthrow walls. In terms of his appearance, once summoned, he will show up resembling a lion and holding a viper in his hands. Now, I don't do well with snakes, so if you request him to change said appearance, he will present in human form, with long black hair, black wings, and now holding a golden cane. I know there's people out there who might be attracted to this, present company included, but don't take that as encouragement to summon him. Known as one of the most difficult demons to summon and work with, he is also one of the only demons who can identify witches and warlocks without being previously informed about their abilities, along with having the ability to tell the past and future, which I can see is kinda tempting. Vine is insensitive to humanity and cares little for harming those who summon him, making him wildly unpredictable and dangerous to summon, along with having the power to take souls without requiring permission. I repeat, dangerous. Right in
at 3, Agarus. Agarus is a demon described in demonological grimoires as a duke, under the power of the East, an old man riding upon a crocodile and carrying a hawk on his fist. Agarus is known to teach languages, however he also stops and retrieves runaways, causes earthquakes, and grants noble titles. Now I shouldn't technically be saying he, because Agarus can be a man or a woman. If the demon is a man, the man is old and riding said crocodile. If the demon is a woman, she is young and angelically beautiful. Now it's surprising how many demons are teachers. They instruct those they visit or possess, and grant knowledge and power, so I guess it's not all bad. The exorcists seem to miss out that little nugget of information. Now, although this demon is downright evil, he or she will grant you the knowledge of every language in the world. However, the bad news, he or she will only teach you the foulest and most offensive words, so say bye bye to your friends, I guess. Yeah, you'll be educated, but you will be vile beyond belief. so you'll be me.
Runner-up for today is Surgat, first mentioned in history in 1517, whose deceptive and cunning mind make him one of the most tricky demons you could possibly think of summoning. Due to his name, he is associated closely with Saturdays. Sure, he might be the least known demon on this list, lacking the background detail that emphasizes the other demons, but he is still very much to be feared. He is known as the one who can open all locks, which may seem a little silly on the surface level, but once summoned, he is impossible to escape or to conceal yourself from unless it's on his terms. Targets of Surgat are relentlessly pursued until found, and then presented with imagery until they go mad. He was the last demon to be summoned by known demon hunter and documentarist Pope Honorarius in his grimoire. Honorarius had thoroughly documented the strengths and weaknesses of every demon he summoned during his research into the oncoming War Against Demons, but had only written ability to open locks about Surgat before his untimely death, leaving history to believe Surgat was responsible for this event. Now, I'm not going to spell out how to summon him, because I hope I've made it clear enough by now that I exist to discourage that kind of behavior, but I did find it kind of neat that one would need a nail from an old coffin to do so. Oh, and before I forget, Surgat is invisible when he manifests, making him easy to lose track of. And in first place, we have Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, Lord of Dung, and God of Filth himself. He is described visually as a smaller and hunched over creature with red or purple skin, ram horns, a forked tongue, and a long tail, along with incredibly powerful wings. Kinda sounds like a D&D character. He often prefers to appear as a fly when summoned, which may sound innocent until you consult history. Flies were believed to have been born from rotting flesh and plagues. According to Christian beliefs, he began his career as a false god, convincing men to worship him and trick them, so he could give faulty advice that would harm instead of helping those in need. Before in the comments asks for a Bible citation, since I haven't been including them for all of the listings today, I'll mention it now. In Mark 3:22, the scribes accused Jesus Christ of driving out demons by the power of Beelzebub, the prince of demons. The name also appears in the expanded version in Matthew 12:24, 27, and Luke 11:15, 18, 19, as well as in Matthew 10:25. Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then can his kingdom stand? And if I drive out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your people drive them out? So then they will be your judges. But if I drive out demons by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God has come upon you." Funny. Hanging around this spooky stuff has me quoting the Bible more than I ever thought I would in my lifetime. Guess I should have paid more attention in my middle school religion classes, or when I was altar serving as a kid, instead of just figuring out the perfect angle to tip a candle at to splash wax on my arm. What? I never said I was a normal kid. Beelzebub is commonly described as placed high in hell's hierarchy. According to the stories of the 16th century occultist Johann Weyer, Beelzebub led a successful revolt against the devil, is the chief lieutenant officer of Lucifer, the emperor of hell, and presides over the Order of the Fly. And I thought I was a workaholic. The 17th century exorcist Sebastian Michaelis, in his admirable history, placed Beelzebub among the three most prominent fallen angels, the other two being Lucifer and Leviathan. John Milton, in his epic poem Paradise Lost, published in 1667, identified the unholy trinity of Beelzebub, Lucifer, and Astaroth, with Beelzebub as the second ranking of the many fallen angels, a quote from him claiming, "Satan except none higher sat." In simple English, only second place is Satan here. His specialty is in tormenting mankind, causing wars, instigating murders, and known for his ability to place humans under the spell of other demons upon request. One thing historians haven't been able to settle on is which major sin he represents, with some claiming pride, others gluttony, but also some claim idolatry. Personally, since he allegedly originated from being a false god, I'm going to side with idolatry. But let me know in the comments which one you believe.
Coming in at number 5, we've got Astaroth. You feeling lazy lately? After a good year or so indoors, followed by some intense socialization, you probably feel like it's time to hibernate again. Fall is rapidly approaching, and with it, the desire to drink hot tea and never leave the house. There are horror movies to be watched and fall recipes to be cooked, but be careful. If you use all of this as an excuse, you might be under the influence of Astaroth. Riding around on the back of a dragon and carrying a staff that sort of looks like a snake, this dude is all about laziness. Astaroth's whole deal is tempting mortals into being lazy. Once he gets them there, it's so much easier to manipulate them into bad behavior. More souls for hell, more blood for the blood god, and all that good stuff. Sounds like fun, right? That's not all he does though, although that is a pretty rough task. People are naturally inclined to laziness anyway, so being tempted into that kind of thing is the worst. In addition to that though, he's also the treasurer of hell, and helps the new demons get a hang of things when they first show up, showing them the super hot ropes and whatnot. Interesting that hell has a currency that they needed organized, eh? I'm sure he does plenty of laundering across all sorts of seedy underworld activities. Interestingly enough, witches see Astaroth a little differently. They consider him a female demon with expertise in all sorts of areas, more specifically, lust, protection, and love. So Astaroth can be many things, but one thing is for sure, and that is Astaroth's terrible breath. That's a fun little demonic detail. In Christian lore, it appears that Astaroth also has dominion over math, and can make people invisible in their search for treasure, so Nathan Drake and Indiana Jones may have something to talk to this demon about. And like most demons of higher orders, Astaroth can answer any questions asked as long as they fall under the topics he knows about. Coming in at number 4, we've got Olivier. A real jerk, this one. We can see this playing out across all cultures and eras, and it's always justified by some ridiculous standard. Cruelty and hatred towards the poor and disenfranchised. More than ever, the line between stable and in the street is thin and blurry, and Olivier takes full advantage of this. I'm sure all sorts of entrepreneurs, influencers, and money hoarders have been visited by this demon. Olivier, baby, the so-called prince of archangels down in the depths, and patron demon of encouraging malice and viciousness towards the poor. That is indeed a low demon to be. We live in a messed up world already. Why should the poor be reviled for simply being poor? At what point do we decide that work is the ultimate good and that nothing else can stand in for that morally or economically? It seems as though the folks who do the most important, most real work, say building the structures that we inhabit or bringing food to the masses, get the short end of the stick. And Olivier apparently has a fair share in keeping that the way things are. Middle managers and corporate drones keep their specific machines chugging and then dump on the poor, telling them that they should simply work harder. Forget Astaroth making folks lazy, making folks think that others are lazy for not making as much money as them is really wild. Olivier, you really are a rat, aren't you?
Now, number 3, Exorcism TV. Now, while exorcisms have served as the inspiration for more than a few Hollywood movies about ghost hunters, it's rare that us, the general plebes and public, ever get a look behind the curtain and get to see what a real exorcism is like in all its ugliness. Well, in 1991, in a controversial move by the Vatican, Reverend James LaBarre oversaw an exorcism of a young woman named Gina, televised for your viewing pleasure to watch while you munch on a big tub of popcorn. Reverend LaBarre, before performing the exorcism, was quoted as saying, "We thought it was important for people to understand that the devil does exist, and most importantly, that the church means to help." He left out that it's just a total coincidence they're filming this and all that, and it's just out of the goodness of their heart. Now, if there's a slight waft of condescension in my narration, it's because this move was not without its controversy at all. A great number of detractors, both of the church and outside of it, argued that this was sensationalizing and exploitative of the young woman, whose problems were certainly not made better by having a camera crew pressed up against her and a boom mic hovering above her head. One critic decried the whole event and the Vatican, referring to the entire process as being regressive and medieval, propping up a mental patient for the entertainment of the masses on a Sunday. Now, the kicker is the young woman was a mental patient and was undergoing treatment for her intense psychological issues and psychotic episodes, and her family had insisted that these problems stemmed from a demon instead of a mental health struggle, but that doesn't make for good TV. The exorcism went off as planned and the church declared it a success, with the Reverend being quoted as saying, "She is up and about, but not well." And the televised exorcism had nothing to do with that, I am sure. Now, if you're curious about hunting this clip down, it is available out there on YouTube, but I'll warn you, Googling Gina exorcism just pulls up results for the Real Housewives of Orange County, which honestly might be way more entertaining and more likely to contain a real demon in it, I feel.
Coming in number 2, we've got Vereen. Oh, this is a nasty one. Patience is a virtue indeed, and it is so easy to lose it. Plus, once patience is off the table, everything just gets so much worse. Sure, some can sit back, relax, and wait, but there are so many forces acting against you at all times. Who wants to wait, right? Especially in this era of constant and instant gratification. Why sit quietly and be ready for whatever when you can do a nosedive into your phone and drown in all of the readily available content? Hell, I bet a lot of you folks watching right now should be doing something else, or at least preparing to do something. Vereen is the demon of impatience and loves to push humans towards acting impatiently. He does it without delay too, no waiting in line, no queuing up, no sitting about until something good happens. So all the folks in your life who seem to act impatiently are probably being influenced by this demon. The dude in the beat-up Corolla who doesn't seem to know what a zipper merge is and decides to rush all the way to the end of the disappearing lane to just nose his way in? Vereen. The lady at the supermarket who absolutely can't believe all of these selfish people with full carts in front of her line unbelievable despite her equally full cart. Vereen. Those folks who pre-order every gosh darn pop culture artifact they think is cool and then whine until it finally arrives in the mail? Vereen. Impatience will end us all, especially if we give into it. Most things will come with time, but if you try too hard to speed up the process, you're just asking for heightened blood pressure and a desire to lash out at all those around you. And that's no fun. Some actually describe Vereen as a female demon too, so if you subscribe to that belief, ignore what I said before while referring to this entity as male. Interestingly enough, this impatient demon is mostly aligned with creation rather than destruction, which is a strange thing for a demon to do, but hey, I'm not going to claim to understand the whims and goals of each and every underworld entity. One last little tidbit before we move on to our final demon of the day, Vereen was supposedly involved in a pretty large-scale possession way back in the 17th century. Yep, it possessed a whole swath of nuns, which had plenty of implications for the church and those who followed it. Fun, right? And finally, at number 1, we've got Luvart. Supposedly the only fallen angel amidst the demonic hierarchy, Luvart is often referred to as the Prince of Angels. High praise for someone so low. This demon is many things, but one that appears quite often is the idea that he presides over possessions. Luvart was even blamed for the possession of Sister Madeleine during the demonic attacks in 17th century France. A round of applause for Luvart, everyone. Jolly good show. Most would think that they'd be safe seeking refuge within the holiest of holy books, but apparently there are plenty of demons. Coming in at number 5, we've got Asmodeus. A lot of folks take great issue with some of those classic vices. You know the ones: sex, rock and roll, all plenty of fun, all the bane of Puritans and teetotalers across the globe. If you delve too deeply into any of the above, you could find yourself receiving plenty of disapproving looks. Too bad, considering how much folks tend to enjoy these things. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Hard to say, especially these days. Who knows when the good won't be available anymore. However, traditionally folks have looked down upon those consumed by lust, whether it be carnal, money-focused, or otherwise. Thankfully, you can blame a demon for all those urges. Isn't life funny that way? Who made up morality anyways? Why not just explain it all away by saying it's totally out of your control? Beautiful, it makes up for everything. So we've got Asmodeus, the supposed son of Adam, once an angel of harlotry. Of course, his angelic properties aren't really around anymore, as he fell from heaven and now lives as a demon in the underworld. With time, he became more well known for stuff like gambling and lust, and somehow became Lilith's husband, which is fun. The two of them, both labeled temptresses, produced all sorts of demonic babies to keep the fires of hell hot. There's also the famous story of Asmodeus killing 7 husbands in a row to keep one woman from consummating her marriage. Like, every time she got married, Asmodeus would show up and murk her husband before they could do the deed. But then she'd go out and get married again. At some point you think she'd learn and see a pattern and stop feeding her suitors to a demon, but hey, maybe she liked the demonic attention. Asmodeus is pretty wicked looking too. Rocking 3 hideous heads, this demon gets around by riding a dragon. This isn't his only look though, as he can appear as a few other forms to appeal to different types of people. I mentioned gambling before, and anyone with that kind of habit can thank Asmodeus for it. Gotta love it. Lastly, his powers do tend to get stronger in November, so once Halloween wraps up, be on the lookout. Lust might not stick around as easily once everyone puts away their sexy costumes, but hey. Coming at number 4, we've got Abisithebu. Rocking with another fallen angel here, we've got Abisithebu. A little tougher to say and spell, but just as scary and powerful. Raunchy as all hell, too. See, Abisithebu left heaven at the same time as the devil himself and didn't take the fall that well. He used to be a flatterer of God, but once he took that trip to the down below, things got ugly. If you're familiar with the most legendary gaming villain of all time, you'll see some inspiration here. While falling, Abisithebu was used as a life raft of sorts by other fallen angels. They grabbed at his body and managed to take hold of one of his wings. This led to the feathered appendage being torn off, leaving our poor demon to be with only one wing. Eventually it did sort of grow back, but not as it was. Abisithebu is known for having a red, grotesque wing. That's how many recognize this demon. Badass, but probably really upsetting to deal with after many lifetimes of perfect angelic wings. Like I said, once he made it to hell, things went extra south. He rules over Tartarus, which is essentially hell jail. All of the worst reside here, suffering eternal torment in a cage of their own creation. How lovely. Abba-Zithibu also has quite the command of sorcery, able to cast powerful spells and persuade influential figures to act in unholy ways. For these reasons and more, it was decided that this demon could no longer have sway over humanity. Abba-Zithibu was eventually trapped in a pillar of air, meant to be trapped for eternity. Tough break for sure. However, many do believe that Abba-Zithibu will return one day and bring with him thousands of years of fury after being trapped so long. His red wing will unfurl and he will return to his vengeful and cruel ways. Who's excited?
In at 3, Belphegor. Belphegor, along with a few other numbers on our list, is a demon and one of the 7 princes of hell. His powers are of seduction, seducing people with money and inventions, promising endless riches. His role as a demon is to turn humans against each other through means of wealth. He uses our gluttonous desires to drive man to evil, promising fortune in the end. Other reports label him as Hell's ambassador to France. Odd title, and his adversary is Saint Mary Magdalene, one of the patron saints of France. His origin is that of a fallen angel and a false god that Moses handed down the death penalty for worshipping. He was dispatched to earth by Satan to deceive mortals, often taking the form of a beautiful woman, typically naked. Although sometimes he can appear as a demon, sporting leathery flesh, horns, sharp teeth, and a gaping mouth, ready to destroy mankind.
Coming in at number 2, we've got Vetus. Corruption. Such a classic human form of folly. We work so hard to avoid it and even do our best to prop up those who remain pure of heart and purpose, but corruption spreads pretty much no matter what. We can thank Vetus for that. Second in command to Lucifer himself, this is the demon who wants to tempt holy people away from their chosen path. Even the most pious has a chance of being drawn in by this demon. He works very hard at figuring out people's deepest desires and then encouraging them to pervert everything they believe in to achieve said goals. Oftentimes these desires are less than socially acceptable, and at worst they can be quite taboo. Does Vetus care that he's ruining lives? Probably not. He takes on different forms to be extra convincing and makes sure to really sweeten the deal whenever he can. However, there is a way you can tell if Vetus is trying to tempt you. He only speaks in rhyme. Interesting, right? Hold on, there's a form of communication that almost exclusively communicates in rhyme and tells people to act in all sorts of wild and depraved ways. Music! Pop music specifically, but hey. Do you think that Vetus is communicating with modern folks through the tunes we so often hear on the radio, telling us to consume, to cavort, to consummate? That's insidious. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Speaking of music, how many songs explicitly reference Beelzebub? I can think of 2 right now, Bohemian Rhapsody and Beelzebos. I'm sure there are plenty more, but you can drop those in the comments. As you do that, I'll continue on my way talking about this demon. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, but also maybe not the devil. There's so much to say about this particular demon and so little time in which to do it. I'll see what I can do with what we've got today. So the Lord of the Flies may be associated with literature read in schools these days, but back before we had a tale of British boys losing their minds on an island, that association with insects was filthy. Ruling over flies meant you had domain over demonic excrement and rot. Not a good thing, right? Throughout history, people have blamed Beelzebub for all sorts of things. He was closely associated with the Salem witch trials and cited often when folks were put to death. Plus, years after that was called off, he was again referenced in many exorcisms, both infamous and unknown. All of this pales in comparison to his actual standing in hell though, where he is known as the Prince of Demons, and rules over the other basement dwellers with an iron fist. His ultimate goal is to destroy the world, and it seems as though he's been planning this for ages, tricking people into worshipping false idols, commanding other infernal beings, and sowing seeds of discontent. Nobody's doing it quite like Beelzebub. I'd recommend learning a song wicked enough to defeat the devil, otherwise you're probably ending up going down to hell with him. Boy oh boy, for a book meant to instill and reinforce faith, there sure are a lot of trials and tribulations, monsters, and mayhem.
In at 5, Aquil. Now there is very little known about Aquil, but what we know is that he is the demon who presides over Sundays and exists within Christian mythology. His purpose is to destroy and degrade the practice of keeping the Sabbath holy, which might not sound absolutely terrible, but if this dude possesses the wrong person, it could be bad news bears for all of us. Imagine the president, a prime minister, even one senator possessed, and suddenly we have to work 7 days a week without a single day off. Yeah. Okay, it's a stretch, but there's a reason he is at our number 5. Honestly, no one wants to work long weekends. Just saying. Also, apologies in advance if I pronounce all these names wrong. I'm not a demon. Shh. In at 4, Sergat. Now, Sergat is a minor demon referenced in the grimoire of Pope Honorius, but this does not diminish the fact that he is straight up evil. He's listed as, I quote, Sergat who opens all locks, and his opposite is actually our previous number, Aquil. So before we even get into this demon, we should discuss how many demons are actually mentioned in the Great Grimoire of Honorius. Who was he? Historians aren't even sure, but they do think that he was Honorius III, who was the Pope from 1216 to 1227. Now, no one is quite sure if he wrote the book or not, but he is famous among popes for deliberately conducting ceremonies to summon demons so he could banish the demons back down to hell. A little odd. This dude does not mess around. Now, how does Sergat come into play? Well, as previously mentioned, he makes appearances in the Grimoire of Honorius, and he is incredibly deceptive and cunning, making him one of the most terrifying demons throughout history. And in the Bible. Yeah, he's there too. Now, as quoted before, this dude is known as the one who opens all locks, which essentially means he is capable of understanding and opening any and all locks in the entire world, making it almost impossible to escape him or conceal yourself from him. When someone becomes Sergat's target, he relentlessly pursues them no matter how hard they try to escape, and once he reaches his victims, he frightens them by presenting them with images that result in them going mad. Yikes. Don't summon this bad boy.
Middle of the pack. In 3rd place, we have Pazuzu. If your first response was to say bless you, we have the same sense of humor. You may be familiar with references made to him in The Exorcist and the House of Ashes video game, but we're not talking about Linda Blair's acting today. As an apotropaic entity, he was considered both a destructive and dangerous wind, but also a repellent to other demons, one who might safeguard the home from their influence if he was in the right mood. Remember, if he was in the right mood. Kinda like me sometimes. He is quoted as introducing himself by stating, I am Pazuzu, son of Anubu, king of the evil Lilu demons. I was enraged in violent motion against the strong mountains and ascended them. Lilu demons are the class to which Pazuzu and his leagues of demons belong. There is also a notable connection to the earlier Babylonian personifications of the four winds. These beings, as depicted on several cylinder seals, have wings, and each represents a different direction of the north, south, east, and west winds. It's important to note that noted professor of ancient studies Franz Wigerman calls attention to the crooked positioning of the masculine west wind in seals. Franz Wigerman calls attention to the crooked positioning of the masculine west wind in seals, which is similar to the posture in Pazuzu's physical depiction. More connections appear in later seals, as this same bent-over figure takes on talons and a scorpion's tail. The main difference in their depictions is the head, and the conclusion was made that it is Pazuzu's body and not his head that denotes him as a wind demon. Another scholar, Scott Neweagle, asserts that Pazuzu's possession of four wings links to the term kipatu, meaning circle, loop, circumference, and totality, suggesting his control over all cardinal directions of wind was inherited from his predecessors. Pazuzu was often depicted with a man's body, the head of a lion or a dog, talons for feet, two pairs of wings, a scorpion's tail, and a serpentine phallus. Around now you might be thinking, Pazuzu is a long name, he has to have some sort of a, nickname or other moniker, right? Sure. He's been called the agony of mankind, suffering of mankind, or disease of mankind. Take your pick. This god of wind and plague is known as Lucifer's right-hand man and has the power to control and rule over other evil spirits, being known to bring forth droughts and famine. It is said that he conspired with Lucifer to overthrow God, and they were thrown out of heaven together. He is fond of corrupting the innocent and good, being known to offer help that appears good and benevolent, but actually requires recipients to request more of his assistance, sending them further and further into his debt, sentencing them to an afterlife of eternal agony. See, reality is agony enough, so I'll pass.
In at 2, Renove. In demonology, Renove is described as a Marquis and the Great Earl of Hell, hence why he is number 2 on our list. This dude commands 20 legions of demons, making him one of the most notorious demons throughout history, one that you certainly don't want to be messing around with. Now, what makes him quite the enigma is that yes, he's awful, the worst, but he's also somewhat of a scholar. He teaches art, rhetoric languages, and gives loyal servants the favor of friends and foes. Now, you may be familiar with this demon, as he is the one who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is horrible enough, but what makes this demon truly terrible is that he is the taker of old souls. Basically, this means anyone who is older looking, or looks a little under the weather, Renove will claim them. Also, pets are not immune to this. He will kill them too. Your best option is just to steer clear of all your elderly relatives, and consider getting a new, younger looking pet. Just saying, they gotta go. And finally, coming in at number 1, Baphomet. This name may ring a bell for you, and that's because Baphomet is a deity that the Knights Templar were falsely accused of worshipping, following which time it was subsequently incorporated into occult and mystical traditions throughout history. It first appeared in trial transcripts for the Inquisition of the Knights Templar beginning in 1307, which resulted in it being popularized in the English language in the 19th century during debate and speculation on the reasons for the suppression of the Templars. The appearance of Baphomet is that of a goat, an image drawn by Eliphas Levi, which contains binary elements representing the sum total of the universe. More interesting still, this picture of Baphomet is often used as a stand-in for Satan by Satanists and Christians alike. Now, it is a highly debated topic about whether this demon was truly good or bad, but if we look to historical accounts, Baphomet comes from a letter written by a French crusader in 1098. He describes the crusaders' enemies in the Holy Land, I quote, calling upon Baphomet prior to battle. Baphomet refers to Muhammad, the prophet. European Christian dogma viewed the worship of Muhammad as idolatry, which was harnessed by a medieval European ruler in the form of a witch hunt targeting his political opponents.
In at 5, Mammon. In the New Testament of the Bible, Mammon is a fallen angel. His name is thought to mean money, material wealth, or any entity that promises wealth. He's essentially the embodiment of the cardinal sin, greed. Sounds like a swell guy. He is associated with the greedy pursuit of gain. I quote, "You cannot serve both God and Mammon." He is often personified as a deity and is included amongst the 7 princes of hell. According to some readings, he is the son of Lucifer himself, conceived before his father fell from heaven and born after he was sent to hell. Before his fall from grace, I quote, "He was more interested in heaven's golden pavement than its celestial leader. From the underworld he comes up with schemes to manipulate humans into adding to his fortune. He is supposedly so powerful that innocent humans can be corrupted by him, adding to his treasures and fortunes instead of virtues that they can carry up to heaven." In at 4, Abaddon. Abaddon is known as the angel of the bottomless pit, one of the many fallen angels we have on our list. In the New Testament book of Revelation, they are described as the king of an army of locusts, as well as Destroyer, the angel of the abyss. As the king of locusts, he has an army resembling horses with crowned human faces, women's hair, lion's teeth, wings, iron breastplates, and a scorpion stinger. Nasty. Many believe Abaddon to be the Antichrist, but others identify him as the angel as Satan. According to Revelation 9:1-11, after the 5th angel sounds his trumpet, a star falls from heaven and opens the bottomless pit. As the storm of smoke arises, and from the smoke a plague of locusts emerge to torment, but not kill, men who lack the seal of God on their foreheads for 5 months. His origin gets a little hazy, making him appear to be the servant of God, yet also a servant of Satan. Guess it's up to you what you believe.
Number 3 on this list is Baelor. Baelor was said to be the chief of a demonic tribe in Celtic culture. He and this tribe threatened the Celtic people with death and destruction constantly. It was also a pretty actionable threat because Baelor was a literal giant. So he and his tribe could obliterate any human resistance if they so chose to do so. His overall strength and size wasn't his best weapon though. His best weapon was his eyeball. His eyeball was said to be poisonous. If Baelor glared at anyone with this evil poisonous eyeball, then they would die right there and then. That is a pretty ridiculous power and kind of OP if you ask me. Now the good thing about this is that legends say Baelor was defeated by his grandson. There was basically a lot of drama and his grandson fought him and took him down. He was never actually killed though. Legend says that he slunk away to the sea and he still resides there to this day. Summoning this demon is clearly just a horrible idea. Not only would you die the second that you summoned him because his eye, but everyone around you would die pretty soon after that too. Just think about the damage a demon like this could cause in a big city. Like, we'd have no way of defending ourselves. Hopefully, my dude stays in the sea for good.
In at 2, Beelzebub. Identified in the New Testament, Beelzebub is the prince of demons. He holds a high position in Hell's hierarchy and supposedly led a successful revolt against the devil. He is the chief lieutenant of Lucifer, the emperor of Hell, and is often placed among the 3 most prominent fallen angels, the others being Lucifer and Leviathan. He is capable of flying, which is the worst, and is known as the Lord of the Fires or the Lord of the Flies. Beelzebub is rumored to be responsible for many demonic possessions throughout history. One of the most famous is the possession of Annalise Michel, a teenager who was diagnosed with epilepsy before a number of exorcisms were later performed, eventually resulting in her death. Beelzebub was also believed to be sowing his influence in Salem, Massachusetts. His name was repeatedly mentioned during the Salem witch trials. And finally, in at number 1, Lucifer. In classical mythology, Lucifer, meaning the bringer of light, was the name of the planet Venus, though in many cases Lucifer was represented as a winged child pouring light from a jar, or even a man bearing a torch. Now in Christianity, as we know, Lucifer became so obsessed with his own beauty and intelligence that he began to desire the honor and power that belonged to God, corrupting him and forcing God to cast him down to the underworld. It is also noted that once he was cast down, he changed his name from Lucifer to Satan, meaning adversary, and following the second coming of Christ, he was bound to the pits of hell during the 1,000-year millennial kingdom over which Christ ruled. All in all, Satan is widely known as the devil himself, an evil entity that seduces humans into sin. He possesses power over the fallen world and a host of various demons. In Judaism, Satan is regarded as an agent subservient to God. There is no answer to whether Lucifer and Satan are two separate entities or whether Lucifer's fall from heaven created Satan, but an examination of several passages reveals that he can be none other than Satan, the devil himself.
In 5th place, we have cherubs. Cherubim, commonly known as cherubs, are usually depicted as chubby, beautiful, and bare little beings with wings in art, as represented by Renaissance sculptors. These depictions of cherubim are often connected with divinity. These animal-human hybrids have been associated with cupids, the diaper-clad chubby babies who are sometimes shown with a trumpet and arrow to symbolize romantic love. Some may attribute this modern-day image to Cupid-like Greek and Roman deities. On the other hand, the biblical image is frequently attributed to cultural exchanges with ancient Babylonia, Egypt, and Syria, which explains their mixed appearance. According to the Bible, cherubs are responsible for guarding the Garden of Eden, the great biblical terrestrial paradise against humankind when Adam and Eve, the first humans, were driven out of the heavenly garden. And as cute as that sounds, time to talk about the real thing. The prophet Ezekiel's vision of cherubim is depicted in the book of Ezekiel, quoted as follows. In appearance, their form was human, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were straight, their feet were like those of a calf, had the face of a human being, and on the right side each had the face of a lion, and on the left the face of an ox. Each also had the face of an eagle. They each had 2 wings spreading out upward, and each had 2 other wings covering its body. The appearance of the living creatures was like burning coals of fire or like torches. Fire moved back and forth among the creatures. It was bright and lightning flashed out of it. Okay, so let's break that vision down. If I'm counting correctly, that's a grand total of 4 faces, 4 wings, 2 regular legs, but with calf hooves instead of feet. I'm trying to picture it. It sounds something like a really bad mutation cooked up in a lab. Genuinely the kind of stuff you don't release to the public. Let me know if there's Men in Black behind me. Okay? In 4th place, we have fur. Kind of reminding me of the term not deer. It may sound funny, but sadly this isn't a laughing matter. Fur or furs in Latin means brand. Okay, I promise it's scary and not just cereal. Bear with me, would ya? It seems much more likely that the name is a corruption of furcifer, the Latin word for scoundrel that also rhymes with Lucifer, which works with him being a count of hell and all. If you're not familiar with the ranking of hell demons, the Lesser Key of Solomon, also known as Lemegeton Clavicula Solomonis, or simply Lemegeton, is an anonymously authored grimoire on demonology. It was compiled in the mid-17th century, mostly from materials that were approximately several centuries older. It is divided into 5 books: Ars Theurgia Goetia, Ars Paulina, Ars Almadel, and Ars Notoria. Focusing mostly on the Ars Goetia, it classifies the 72 demons into classes: kings, dukes, princes, marquises, counts, knights, and lastly, presidents. Fur is the ruler of 26 legions of demons, which is no small feat. He is a liar unless compelled to enter a magic triangle where he gives true answers to every question, speaking with a rough voice. Fur causes love between a man and a woman, creates storms, tempests, thunder, lightning, and teaches on secret and divine things. Visually speaking, he appears as a deer with wings, shiny crazy eyes, and sharp teeth. I swear I didn't know this before making the not deer joke a minute ago, but hey, maybe hanging around with a professional mind reader friend is starting to rub off on me.
Coming in at number 3, we've got Legion. One person can be many things, but in this case, one demon is actually many demons. And these demons were so nasty, so evil, that Jesus himself had to exorcise them. Holy smokes, right? Legion is quite popular in the pop culture pantheon, and many famous exorcisms and related events seem to use him as the prime example. With so many demons dwelling within one main demonic form, they can take over the souls of people relatively easily and with varied results. However, all of the demons that make up Legion act as a sort of hive mind. They all have the same knowledge, thoughts, and reactions to things, and if one demon from the collective experiences something, they're all aware of it. With all of that knowledge and the ability to spread out all over the place, Legion can be a terrifying adversary. And even though Jesus does manage to send Legion back to hell in the Bible, there isn't much guaranteeing that many parts of Legion can't come back. Most folks only experience Legion as individual parts too. This is when the demon is at its weakest, as each individual piece of the whole only holds so much power. Were Legion to assemble all of the many together, we could be in trouble. Imagine all the limbs.
In second place, we have Ophanim. They're described in the book of Ezekiel as their entire bodies, including their backs, hands, and wings, being full of eyes all around, as were their 4 wheels. Now, the only way I can picture this not being absolutely terrifying is if they were covered entirely in cute, sticky, googly eyes. Wait, I just pictured it. Scratch that, that's also nightmare fuel. Ophanim, or the wheels, are one of the strangest, most bizarre beings referenced in Ezekiel's vision. They're portrayed as beings made of interlocking gold wheels, with every wheel adorned with numerous sets of eyes on the exterior. These wheels, however, do not change directions as the creatures move by floating in the skies. The second book of Enoch refers to Ophanim as the many-eyed one, and they're sometimes also described as spheres or whirlwinds. Specifically speaking, in Christian angelology, they are one of the classes of angels and are also called thrones. There's an interesting theory that the Ophanim are the wheels attached to God's chariot. These wheels have been associated with Daniel 7:9, where they are mentioned as Galgal, traditionally the wheels of Galgalin, in fiery flame and burning fire of the 4 eye-covered wheels, which are each composed of 2 nested wheels that move next to the winged cherubim beneath the throne of God. 4 wheels move with the cherubs because the spirit of the cherubs is in them. Some folks, like former NASA scientist Jose F. Blumrich, believe that Ophanim might have been what we would consider a UFO sighting today. As someone who has talked a decent amount about UFO and alien sightings lately, I'm tempted to believe it at this point, and it would probably help validate a lot of modern historical sightings. And in our first place position, we have the Archangels. They're the second lowest ranking angels, so I can kinda understand why they might be a little more likely to do evil things. The English word archangel is derived from Greek archangelos, the Greek prefix arch meaning chief. In Christianity, Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel are the most commonly recognized messenger boys and are celebrated in the Roman Catholic Church with a feast on September 29th for Michael, March 24th for Gabriel, and October 24th for Raphael, which I guess that's kind of sweet. But if you should know by now, we don't exactly do sweet here. Michael was involved in battles and fought closely with his good friend Lucifer, who, I'll call Lucifer right now to make things a little fun. When Lucifer's pride, otherwise known as one of those pesky 7 deadly sins, got the best of him, he decided to stage a full-on rebellion against God. He and a third of the angel population launched a war in heaven over the coveted throne. If I had a banner right now, I'd be cheering him on. Michael, being the good guy he is, wasn't having any of this, and he and his angels rose up against the threat in an angel-on-angel war that ended with Michael laying down the law and casting the rebels out of heaven. Lucifer was hurled from heaven down to earth and was now labeled Satan, which means adversary. Granted, this wasn't the last time Lucifer and Michael fought, with Michael later winning the fight for Moses' soul when Lucifer tried to claim it first. Oh well, can't win them all. Next up, we have Gabriel. He had the fun task of announcing the birth of John the Baptist to Zechariah. But when Zechariah's initial reaction was one of protest, Gabriel's anger escalated rather quickly, stating, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and bring to you this good news. But now, because you did not believe my words, you will become mute, unable to speak until the day these things occur." Look, maybe give someone a minute to process what they're seeing if they're not used to seeing angels before you curse them for, reacting normally. Might be a safer bet. I'm no expert. Even then, my chatterbox self would take that over Raphael's mean streak. The book of Enoch tells the story of Raphael's battle with the demon Azazel, and Azazel's fate at the hands of the archangel is so much worse than death. Under the orders of God, Raphael bound the demon's hands and feet, found a hole full of rocks, dumped him in it, and buried him alive in the desert where Azazel just sorta had to wait before being burned at the stake. I can see where people got the inspiration for how to handle witches. Now that I've discussed the main three, there's a fun little honorable mention I didn't want to leave out. Uriel, a lesser known archangel, was against the idea of fallen angels taking human wives to breed with, so he spoke up and requested divine intervention in the matter. He wasn't taking it easy on anyone either. Even the humans were considered guilty of defiling mankind with these unions, and ignorance was not an acceptable excuse. The existence of these crossbreed abominations and the desire to rid the world of them led to a great flood to cleanse the earth, so thanks for that. Anyone out there have a spare arc? I hope you'll understand now just how terrifying archangels are. And that brings me to the end of today's list, and I'm kind of torn between wondering if I should, swing by a church and bless myself with holy water on my way home, or vow right now to never visit another Catholic church ever again. In 5th place, we have Hars, a Duke of Hell. Granted, he also goes by Floros, Flavros, Horas, or Havres, depending on who you ask. He is a great duke, ruling over 36 legions of spirits, and most commonly appears as a large leopard with a human face and evil eyes. In his human form, he has been known to appear as a male figure with red liquid eyes, body ablaze with flame and other scary features, but also as a tall female figure, and that is slender in flame with flowing red hair. If that appeared in front of me, I'd probably be a little tempted too. Horus tends to be a demon a lot of folks try to summon due to his abilities to answer queries about the past, present, and future, which I know it's tempting. I too would love to know if I'll ever be able to afford to buy a home in this economy, but it's not worth the risk. Ooh, he's able to burn and destroy my enemies? Okay, maybe just like a little summoning just once as a treat. Just like a little list. 2 people. Okay, no, I know better. I don't want to be a bad influence. No demon summoning. When summoning him, if one does not follow the steps to the letter, so specifically invoking the magical triangle properly, he will take every opportunity to trick and lie to whoever is susceptible. He's also a very jealous demon, and not only does he not play well with others, he can be called upon to inflict vengeance on other demons. No, I'm not going to tell you how to summon him. No. Also, for the horoscope girlies like myself, he's a Capricorn. In 4th place, we have Balefur, a Duke of Hell. Sure, he only rules like 10 legions of spirits, but you'll see why in a minute. He's a bit of a busy guy. Something I know I can personally relate to. I swear I don't have a social life anymore. Going also by the monikers of Malifar, Malifar, and Valifar, he is known to appear as a lion with the head of a man, or as a lion with the head of a donkey. Okay, Midsummer's Night Dream, getting those vibes. He is also depicted as being utterly monstrous, with multiple lion limbs, a mighty mouth with a second one underneath, the ears of a donkey, and a devilish tail. No, he's not a Leo, but good guess. He tempts people to steal and is in charge of a good relationship among thieves. Balefar is considered a good familiar by his associates until they get caught in his trap. That's the thing with these demons. Sure, they'll tempt you with what you think you need, or what you desire that's impossible for a reason, but I've never heard of a demon acting out of the goodness of their heart. Seriously, have you? They have needs as well, and those include playing with humans like we're their own personal little chess set. And sadly, we'd be only pawns in that game. No powerful queens here. Or so you could think. A goal of his is to collect human greed and manifest it as glittering treasure, while he teaches loyalty and the art of manipulation. Other demons refer to him as a tricky a-hole, so do with that information what you will. Most demons tend to show up, do what's needed, and then buzz off to wherever they need to go next. But Balefur will join you on whatever adventures you go on, even after the original summoning. But you should be careful, because if you're not smart enough or you're a bad sorcerer, he's gonna trick you as well. I'm not shocked. You shouldn't be shocked. He's able to manipulate angels and wizards to commit crimes and steal secrets for his own benefit, and he can use hellfire to dazzle the enemy with blinding explosions or to attack and defend himself. So while watching whoever he perceives as an enemy, he can use combustion to end someone by making them burn alive and create a wall of hellfire on command. Funny enough, he's a Taurus, so happy birthday, you stubborn demonic thing. No, you are not invited to any birthday parties. In 3rd place, we have Seraphim. According to the Christian angel hierarchy, Seraphim hold the highest rank. The 2 main historical influences on Seraphim's name come from the Hebrew term seraph, spelled S-A-R-A-P-H, meaning venomous desert snake, and seraph, spelled S-E-R-A-P-H, meaning to burn. The Bible describes Seraphim as having 6 wings, 4 of which are used to cover their heads and feet in front of God as a symbol of humility, and the remaining 2 used to fly. Unlike the cherubs, seraphim are not guard angels. Seraphim are described by the prophet Isaiah as angelic beings that continually worship God by surrounding God's throne and singing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory in unison when God approaches." Cripes, I think that's the most I've chanted since I stopped frequenting the Catholic Church when I was in like grade 9. Also, by constant, I mean around the clock kind of constant. They never stop. While they are the epitome of helpfulness and forgiveness, their appearance installs fear in those that lay eyes on them. Several historians suggest that the description of the seraphim's wings and flames may have been based on the connection with Egyptian imagery and description of the cobra. I guess I spoke too soon when I was praying I would never have to talk about snakes ever again. And in case that wasn't clear enough, not only do these snakes have wings, they possess fire capabilities. That's way too many levels of terrifying for me. Nope, not gonna happen. In second place, we have Beleth, the king of Down Under. No, not Australia, you comedians. Hell. Out of today's entire list, he probably commands the most demons. Ready for this? 85 leagues. Personally, I wouldn't be able to handle that kind of responsibility. I'm barely able to command my own life as it is. Similar to Horez, he also goes by a couple of different names, such as Belet, Beleth, Byleth, and Billeth. Very fond of alliteration, I see. When summoned, he originally appears as a terrifying dark knight on a horse, is accompanied by a cacophony of music, and presents himself as scary as possible to test the conjurer. If the summoner is not deemed courageous, bad times would be ahead for whatever poor soul tried. Also, and once again, do not summon, but if he decides you are strong enough, he'll be kind to you, but only if the conjurer is holding a hazel wand and draws the summoning triangle to the south, east, and upwards. He's also pretty judgy, so if you look like a slob, all bets are off. Yeah, I feel like I'm out here. While summoning him, one must wear a silver ring on the middle finger of the left hand to protect themselves from his fire-breathing abilities. Speaking of that fiery stuff, his overall abilities include the capability to throw fireballs and hellish explosions from his hand and mouth that can incinerate angels and can create large crimson fire dragon heads, which on impact can, incinerate or explode any opponent. Oh, the pyromaniacs out there want more. Who am I to deny? So Beleth has tried his dang best to emulate holy fire and couldn't recreate it perfectly, but has instead created a light yellow fire that manifests itself from tendrils in the hands and forearms that pierce and burn any target, but keep a soul trapped in the black crystals made with the ash that he can keep as a souvenir. Oh, and he can shoot needles from his hands with the same effects. By the way, any results from this power are irreversible, so unless you want to turn into, Mr. or Mrs. Big Pile of Dust, I'd recommend avoiding that. He can also fire laser-like beams from his hands that are even more powerful than Hellfire, that can and will incinerate anything in its path. Yeah, definitely a Leo. Too much fire not to be. Oh, almost forgot. He's able to create weapons such as swords, daggers, spears, needles, and create blades in his hands. All that fire and the ability to create weapons? No thanks. In first place, we have Baal, one of the kings of Hell. He is the most powerful demon on our list today and commands a grand total of 66 legions of beings. As a treat, because it's first place, I'll do the math for this one. You folks ready for this? He commands anywhere between 198 to 396,000 demons, which is roughly the size of a small city. He is a fallen angel turned demon with the power to make men invisible, and I just shuddered mentally thinking about that. Visually, he's horrific, so I can understand why he would want to be, invisible. Let me guess. You want all the details, right? If I get nightmares tonight, I'm blaming it on this. When summoned, he appears as a creepy monster with 3 heads, one of a frog, another of a cat, and the third is of an older man with pale eyes and strange ears. Oh, that's not scary enough. Okay. So instead of human legs, he has a dozen spider legs. I don't usually describe myself as an arachnophobe, but this visual is terrifying. No thanks! I'll stick to thinking about pretty unicorns and Disney characters so I can maybe get this thing called sleep tonight. Not super familiar with the concept, but I've heard it's a good time. Symbolically, the spider legs represent an ancient symbol of hard work and creation, but also cruelty, greed, and cunning. The frog head is representative of a new beginning and physical wealth, while the cat head is for mental wealth and security. Baal is the lord of storms, winds, and rains, and I'd appreciate it if he could stop with that these days. He's been described as communicating with a very hoarse voice, and it's rude that there are no accounts of anyone offering him a cup of tea during a summoning. If you're listening, almighty demon, I'd highly recommend a honey citrus mint concoction to see if that helps. His special skills include demonic projectiles, which is the ability to mold his power of destruction into many highly mobile spheres capable of eliminating things without a trace and bypasses target's defenses, resulting in apparently minimal damage to the surrounding environment. How, considerate of him? From specifically his human head, he can spew out large amounts of wave-like or tsunami-like magma that can completely eliminate armies and can spit myriads of magma balls that hit many targets individually. From his cat head, he can fire beams that will combust or end anyone. I promise I'm not writing a video game character here, even though he kinda sounds like it. From specifically the frog's head, he has a prehensile tongue that can reach out and catch fleeing opponents and devour them. Oh, and he can vaporize angels. No biggie, right? Yeah, he's definitely an Aries.
Number 5. Marchicha Corici. Now, when demonic possession is the leading symptom, you don't go to WebMD, you call the cloth, and you send a man with a fancy little black case and a crucifix to come excise the demons from your soul and your mortal body. That's basic stuff. But what happens when demonic possession occurs to someone inside the church? You don't hear about that a lot. What's the protocol? Well, in the case of Marchicha Corici, that is exactly what happened. This young woman was a member of the convent living in Romania sometime in the 20th century, when she became the unwilling host to a hostile demon that had moved in and paid first and last for rent inside her body. She believed that not only was she possessed by a demon, but that she was being spoken to directly. The devil was using her head as a landline, and she was being whispered demonic thoughts and threats all hours of the day. I can imagine that would be so exhausting. I get tired of my own thoughts. Can't imagine having to hear Satan's every little thought too. Now, initially she was being treated for possible schizophrenia, but when that didn't take care of the problem, the church sent an agent in to clear out the demonic presence. She was offered a little bit of holy water to drink, but gagged it up and was then restrained to be exorcised. Now, in my opinion, I feel like that's a bad test. I can't imagine holy water is really that refreshing. I wouldn't know, never had it. Maybe it's like San Pellegrino. I don't know. Anyway, she was bound to a cross and was gagged with a wet cloth soaked in holy water and subjected to round-the-clock exercising over the course of 3 days. Now, she wasn't fed during this time, nor were any of her medical needs tended to, and shockingly, Marchicha would pass from her conditions, leaving this earth a free soul, if for nothing else. Now, the priest involved in the exorcism would later undergo investigation, and he would insist that he was innocent from his involvement with Marchicha's death, as he was simply trying to cure her the way God intended, and her death was an unfortunate incident as a result of the process. Yeah, sure, but isn't the point of an exorcism to, get the ghosts and demons out there so the host can go on living? In the end, the courts ruled that Marchicha's death was due to adrenaline injections when she was taken into hospital care. And if you're looking for way more stories of exorcism, demons, cryptids, true crime, fake crime, just about all that scary stuff, we've got all of that and then some. Hit the bell, subscribe, and don't miss a scream, but do that after the end of this video, okay? We got way more exorcisms and demons coming up for you.
Number 4. The Exorcisms of John Paul II. Being the Pope is not an easy gig. I mean, I'm assuming it isn't. You're always having to wear funny hats while living in a gigantic palace. You're having to pray for the people of the world constantly, and as someone who is traditionally believed to be God's personal representative on earth, and due to papal infallibility, is believed by many Catholics to be incapable of making mistakes. In addition to all this, the Pope has to find time to drag race his Pope-mobile and get poked with a stick by his men to make sure that he is still alive. As if that weren't enough, he also has to perform exorcisms from time to time. One of the popes with the most direct battles with the devil under his belt is St. John Paul II. When John Paul II wasn't busy ignoring church scandals and preaching that divorced women who remarried would go to hell, he was also known for doing battle with Satan. He performed his first exorcism as Pope on March 27, 1982, when a bishop brought forward a young woman named Francesca Fabrizi, hoping that the Pope could assist her in her issues. Upon seeing the Pope, she fell to the ground and started writhing uncontrollably while sobbing. The Pope tried to comfort her, but she didn't calm down until he said, quote, "Tomorrow, I will say a mass for you." This apparently worked and she was freed, but dude, you're the Pope. Why wait until tomorrow to help? Anyways, Francesca later visited the Pope a few years later with her husband and children to show how much better she was doing. It apparently prompted John Paul to say, quote, "I've never seen anything like this before. It was a biblical scene." In the year 2000, John Paul performed another exorcism in St. Peter's Square when a woman was brought into the square and immediately began yelling and lunging at the Pope, requiring 10 people to hold her down as she drooled and yelled blasphemies. The Pope finished his weekly address and requested to meet the young woman. At the sight of him, her eyes rolled back and she started screaming to be left alone. Old JP performed the exorcism, blessing her several times, but this case needed follow-up from Father Gabriel Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist, and the inspiration for the soon-to-be-released horror film, The Pope's Exorcist. I guess the moral is, if you're a demon who doesn't want to be exorcised, maybe don't go to the Vatican.
Coming in number 3, we've got a Dramalek. So we talked about Beelzebub last time and his tendency to bring about terrible things. There's plenty of responsibility that comes to being Lord of the Flies, and he's gotta have some help from time to time. Unfortunately, there aren't any temp agencies or internship programs in hell. Most folks are just destined to do their jobs and do them for all of time. This is where Adramelech comes in. This demon does his best to give Beelzebub a hand by assisting the Lord of the Flies as a great minister and chancellor, a lofty title for such an interesting demon. On top of being this assistant in Hell's hierarchy, Adramelech was also known for being a sun god who demanded human sacrifice. So even before being adopted by those beneath the surface, he was causing trouble. I wonder how many humans were dropped in his name. And I wonder how many of them ended up in Hell, possibly even under his command. Makes you think now, doesn't it? There might be a moon god brother out there demanding similar bloodshed, but I can't make any guarantees. Lastly, before I go, I'll bring up a point I mentioned in another video. Adramelech has quite the eye for fashion and quite possibly a taste for Prada. You see, the devil relies upon this particular demon for all of his wardrobe needs. That's right, Adramelech is in charge of the clothes the devil wears. You'd think that down in hell it wouldn't matter all that much, but vanity is a sin, so that fits right in.
Number 2, Roland Doe. 2 in a row, me again, hey. Doing a list about notorious demons that led to the church intervening in an exorcism would be rather incomplete if we didn't include the case of Roland Doe. The exorcism so infamous that it would end up being synonymous with the word exorcism, inspiring the legendary horror movie The Exorcist. And to a lesser extent the original novel the film was based on, but we don't read books here, those are for nerds. Now the real case was mostly just inspiration for the film because in actuality things are pretty different. For one thing, instead of Reagan, the host in question was a boy named Roland Doe, who may never have thrown up any pea soup or twisted his head 180 degrees, but definitely had a spiritual problem. As a youngster, Doe was a socially isolated boy who didn't spend much time with anyone else in the neighborhood, instead spending most of his time with his Aunt Harriet, who was fascinated by the occult and spirit worlds. For a birthday one year, she gave onto Roland a Ouija board and taught him how to use it and taught him of all the spirit world. And this would invite troubles into his life. After Aunt Harriet would pass, it wasn't long before strange things started plaguing the Doe household. Growling from out of nowhere, furniture moving. Eventually a priest was called in to investigate and deduced that Roland had become a vessel. Now this exorcism was brutal, even by exorcism standards, which I guess is why it got made into a movie. When Roland was restrained, he managed to escape and slashed at the priest with a broken bed spring. On the boy's body, red scratch marks were spelling out Louis, so he was relocated to St. Louis to face even more exorcising. After a brutal battle by seasoned priests, Roland claimed he had a vivid dream of St. Michael battling against Lucifer for control of his soul in a divine field. Do you think he ever saw the movie afterwards, though?
Number 1. This loser. In Germany in the 1930s, a new political party came into power, stoking the country's nationalism and pandering to xenophobia against the Jewish people of the country in order to justify horrible atrocities and efforts to invade other countries, thus kicking off the Second World War. This political party was called the National Socialist Germans Worker Party, but most people refer to them as idiots. Their leader, Hitler, was an evil man who led his country into fascism, caused the extermination of more than 6 million Jewish lives, and started a war that led to between 70 to 85 million people dying. In the face of all the harm this art school reject caused, many people wonder how it is possible for one man to have been so evil. Some have theorized that he was a sociopath, and others have said that anyone is capable of such atrocities if they are given the authority and power to act against those they have prejudice against. But others believe there was another element of a more supernatural nature at play. Some people thought that the Fuhrer was so evil because he was possessed by a demon. One of the people who thought this was the Pope. Vatican documents released in 2006 showed that the Pope of the era, the Venerable Pius XII, believed that little Dolphy was diabolically possessed. One of the requirements for an exorcism is that it is carried out in the physical presence of the afflicted party with their expressed consent. But as Pius was concerned about the mass exterminations taking place, he decided to take a literal Hail Mary approach against Hitler's attempts to take over the world. In the privacy of his private chambers, Pius performed a long-distance ritual of liberation of the devil on the German leader, hoping that God would expel the devil from the mustachioed twerp and bring an end to the atrocities that were being committed. Whether it be because the Pope's long-distance prayer powers weren't up to snuff, or because the evil in question was human in nature rather than demonic, The exorcism failed and the war continued, despite the Pope's hope for divine intervention.
Number 5 on this list is the Jinn, an ancient demon whose main method of attacking people was to trick them. History Collection says the Jinn, or Jinn of Arabic and Islamic mythology, closely matched the original classic daemon or demon. Neither good nor evil, the Jinn were supernatural spirits born of smokeless fire long before the creation of humanity. The Jinn were spiritual beings, formless shapeshifters with magical powers who are ranked somewhere between humans and angels. They were not immortal and humans could kill them. However, a long lifespan compensated them for these disadvantages. In Persian mythology, the Jinn had their own land, Jinnistan, whose capital was the City of Jewels. However, the Jinn also haunted the human world, with favorite places of residence being the desert as well as rivers, wells, and even marketplaces. In this sense, they are very much like the Roman geniloshi spirits of place, and it was customary to ask the local jinns permission before drawing water or even traveling into alien territory. If they appeared before humans, the jinn could appear as animals, monsters, or people. Whatever form they took, people could quickly identify them by their flaming eyes, which were also vertical rather than horizontal. This unusual attribute gave the jinn a sinister appearance that married well with some of their more suspect traits. For although the jinn could be helpers, they were also known to be malicious tricksters. In the worst scenarios, they would raise storms and cause disease, insanity, and death. Islam teaches that every human has an evil jinn whose sole purpose is to tempt its human opposite into evil. This reputation for malevolence is compounded by the fact the chief jinn, Iblis, is also known as Azazel, the Islamic devil. So yeah, I don't think summoning these guys is the best plan. You could literally release a massive disease on your whole city or something like that. Also, you need to be extremely mentally stable and strong to not get tricked by these evil things into doing something that you don't want to do. Speaking as a pretty gullible individual, this would really not be a good idea for me. Number 4 on this list is the Yao Guai. Unless you want your literal life force to get eaten, I wouldn't summon these demons. History Collection says the Yao Guai, or strange ghosts or strange devils, were mythical Chinese demons who, like the Asura, desired immortality and godhood. They included in their number animal spirits such as the fox spirits and fallen celestial beings. However, even though they acquired their powers through the practice of Taoism, the Yao Guai cared little for the balance between light and dark. They were firmly on the dark side and would stop at nothing to achieve their goals of deification. They believed they could accomplish this goal by consuming the life force of holy men. One tale of the Yao Guai appears in the 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West. The story tells of the pursuit of the holy man Yao Xiang by Bei Guzhong, or White Bones Demon. However, unfortunately for Bei Guzhong, Yao Xiang was traveling in the company of Sun Wukong, or the Monkey King. The company first encountered the evil spirit disguised as a young girl searching for food. However, the Monkey King saw through the demon's disguise and drove it off with his staff. The Bei Guzhong tried again, firstly disguised as an old woman and finally as an old man. This final time, the Monkey King killed the demon, revealing its true form, a skeleton. Staffs, however, were not the only way to deal with these demons. As they lived in the underworld, the Chinese believed they were afraid of the light. So bonfires, fireworks, and torches were the perfect way to keep them at bay. So if you summon this thing, you may not even know that you have, because it could appear as something else entirely. So, unless you have the awareness and power of the Monkey King, which, no offense, I kinda doubt you do, this demon will probably end up getting the better of you.
In third place, we have Vine, an Earl and King of Hell. History isn't quite sure if he rules over 19 or 36 legions of beings, which is pretty dang scary to think about. I'd love a fact check down in the comments if anyone considers themselves more of, an expert. The significance of his name seems to be from the Latin word vinea, vine, which is also the name given to an ancient war machine made of wood and covered with leather and branches used to overthrow walls. In terms of his appearance, once summoned, he will show up resembling a lion and holding a viper in his hands. No, I don't do snakes. If requested requested to change that appearance, he will present in human form with long black hair, black wings, and now holding a golden cane. Okay, I know there's some people out there who might be attracted to this, visually, guilty, but don't take that as encouragement to summon him. A pretty face is not worth it, trust me. Known as one of the most difficult demons to summon and work with, he's also one of the only demons who can identify witches and warlocks without being previously informed about their abilities, along with having the ability to tell the past and future. Vine is insensitive to humanity, and cares very little for harming those who summon him, making him wildly unpredictable and dangerous to summon, along with having the power to take souls without requiring permission. In terms of abilities, Vine can create or summon hellstorms that fire lightning bolts that will explode or incinerate an intended target. The storms will literally track down the target until the goal is accomplished. He can also create or summon hellfire rains that have the ability to burn a human alive and incinerate them, and they're going to follow that target until their job is done. Oh, and not just humans. He can manipulate hellfire that's capable of incinerating gods, archons, djinns, and titans. Of course, he's a dang Gemini with, the appearance changing and all. I love my Geminis in my life, but a stereotype is only a stereotype when it's true.
Number 2 on this list is the Shadim. These were ancient demons associated with destruction and human sacrifice. The history collection says, to the Mesopotamians, the Lamassu or the Shedu were powerful human-headed, eagle-winged guardian spirits of the home or the state. The Mesopotamians erected statues of these powerful entities who had the body of either a bull or lion at the gates of palaces or cities. There, they were well placed to ward off invading armies and ensure peace to those within the city walls. In ordinary households, images of the Shedu were carved on clay tablets and buried under the threshold to ensure peace and happiness within. When the Israelites encountered the Shedu, however, they interpreted them in a very different way. Some of them took up the Mesopotamian custom of worshipping them, hence disapproving references in the Old Testament to how such people sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. Now, to the Jewish mainstream, the Shedu were false idols that possessed statues and masqueraded as gods. As such, they were evil, and so became the Shedim, demons associated with destruction, illness, and human sacrifice. So I guess if you were Mesopotamian, then you could summon these guys and it'd be all good, but if you're anyone else, probably not a good idea. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not trying to deal with a demon full of destruction and illness and just don't want to handle any of that. So no thank you, not trying to get sacrificed today. Number 1 on this list is Allah. So instead of reaching for a Nature Valley bar, this demon would grab the occasional child when she was hungry. Just great. The history collection says Allah is a female demon from Eastern Europe who, like many demons, seems to be derived from a belief in nature and weather spirits that could cause disaster and disease. Allah was believed to reside in clouds, lakes, and springs, or remote mountains or caves, or in large trees. When she visited humankind, she could take many forms. Allah could manifest as a vast black wind or a female dragon, a large-mouthed human, or a raven. She could even possess people. All or any of these relate to Allah's primary characteristic, all-consuming greed. If angered, the demon could manifest violent, thunderous hailstorms to destroy fields, vineyards, and orchards. However, it was equally likely she would satisfy her enormous appetite by devouring the produce herself. And when not over-consuming stolen grape or grain, Allah also liked to snack on her greed was so insatiable that she also periodically tried to eat the sun and the moon, therefore causing eclipses. So not only could you or your get eaten if you summon this thing, but you might also cause the entire world to end if this demon decides that she's hungry enough to chow down on the sun for good. Also, how big would this demon need to be if she was about to eat the entire sun? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Either way, never summon this demon because the human race could literally be at stake if you do.